All throughout our lives we have many meetings. Some we remember, others not so much. None of us remember our first meeting, that one where we took our first breath, and we don't have time to remember what took our last, except in this poem. There's so much uncertainty within the poem, which is understandable. It's not a situation that generally happens. But what we do know is that there are two soldiers that meet, one who had killed the other. The meeting is actually hinted at in the title. It comes from Shelley's The Revolt of Islam. Gone forth whom now strange meeting did befall. Much like this poem, the line in revolt is about two enemies meeting, one who'd pierced the other. The narrator says this as he lay mid friends and foe, all there together, no difference, nothing separating them, but all connected by a single experience. The Revolt of Islam was published almost 100 years before Owen's poem, yet these strange meetings connect them through time. Back to the uncertainty. What do we actually know about the two soldiers, other than that the narrator killed the other one? It can be assumed that it was World War I, since that was the war Owen was in, and the poem was written around about 1918. But if that's the war, which side were the soldiers on? As the Wilfred-Owen Association points out, the narrator could be Owen, so part of the Allied powers, but it's the other soldier that gives the message of the poem, the pity of war. But that's not uncommon, that the so-called antagonist gives the message of the piece, or at least there's something profound. Think the mayor in Buffy, or more classically, Caliban in Shakespeare's The Tempest. They may have been the bad guy, but they still spoke the truth, and it needed to be heard. That's not to say that the narrator is part of the Allied powers, or even Owen himself. It could just as easily be the other way around, or that Owen isn't either of them. I think the point is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they were, or what side they were on. Their roles could have been reversed, and it still be the same story. They still would have met on the battlefield, and one of them would have died. Like with the Revolt of Islam, the dead lay together indiscriminately and end up in the same place. But what is this place? Is it a dream? A guilty man who receives forgiveness? A nightmare, being forced to face the man he killed? A hallucination, or is it the afterlife? We don't really know, and from the narrator saying seemed, we get the impression that he doesn't know either. The best we can do is talk about it as if it is the afterlife, or the narrator's unconscious version of it. Elizabeth Vandiver's book, Stand in the Trenches, Achilles, and Charlotte Higgins' Guardian article about the book talk about the possible classical influences which suggest a Greek or Roman underworld. I can see it, especially with the lines, in two vain citadels that are not walled, then much blood had clogged their chariot wheels, or Titanic wars, Titans being part of Greek mythology. But that's not how I read it the first time. Now, though, I'm more inclined to that idea, but we'll come back to that in a sec. The narrator calls it hell, which he only realises when he recognises the man he killed, but it's not the kind of hell most people think of. Hell brings up Christian imagery, but as Stephen Greenbolt points out, echoing Dante, Shakespeare, Shelley, Keats, and the Bible, Owen puts literary and religious language into jarring new relationships with the absurdities of modern war experience. Well, we've had Shelley, but the Bible, and I guess Dante's hell, has been twisted here. Hell is supposed to be a bad place, a place for punishment of wrongdoers, but it's not here. It's actually almost a better place to be than alive and in the war. The narrator said that he escaped here from battles, as if hell was a safer place to be than the pain, and the noise, and the fear of war. Hell was a better place because they'd already gone through it. He even says here is no cause to mourn, and the other soldier has a smile on him when they meet, a dead smile. On a side note, Owen has used similar imagery in relation to the dead, or the soon-to-be dead, elsewhere, like in Smile, 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 The Last Laugh, and in mental cases with lines like, baring teeth that leer like skulls. Skulls can look almost like they're smiling or laughing, and Owen uses it almost ironically. Though I don't think that's what he's doing here, since the soldier is recognisable and lifting distressful hands as if to bless. It is interesting, the similar imagery. Anyway, back to hell. The fact that this place is not really a bad place lends credit to it being the underworld. In mythology, the underworld is made up of multiple places, from rivers to fields and meadows. Some are bad, like Tartarus. Others are good, like the Elysian fields. And others that are for neither good nor bad, but just neutral people. Physically, it fits both hell and the underworld equally. Owen gives an underground feel to the place, with down some profound dull tunnel, and mentions of upper ground, and both hell and the underworld are generally considered underground. Think Descent into Hell or Orpheus returning through a tunnel. It also links it to Siegfried Sassoon's poem The Rearguard. Both are set underground, though Sassoon's is in the trenches, and the narrators of the poem meet someone dead who's lying down. Both are described as hell, but they're very different places. Sassoon's underground tunnel is filled with unwholesome air, and tins, boxes, bottles, and other things the narrator has to navigate around. While in Owen's, though it's not explicitly mentioned, I get the impression of a vast empty space, filled only with encumbered sleepers. In Sassoon's hell, the soldiers, the dazed and muttering creatures, are haunted by the echoes of war, as they hear the boom of shells and muffled sound, while Owen's hell is an escape from it. No guns thumped here, or down the flues may moan. The dead that they meet are also different. In Rearguard, it's a corpse, just a shell of a man who died in agony 10 days before. Very different from Owen's dead soldier, who jumps up and speaks, quite beautifully actually, to the narrator. It's interesting to note that Owen's other poems feature underground settings, or holes or tunnels, that are more similar to the Rearguard, like in Miners, or The Show, or the We Cringe in Holes of Exposure. Both Rearguard and Strange Meeting use setting to show the horror of war, the pity of war. Sassoon shows the physical horror, the conditions they lived in, what they saw, what they heard, while Owen focuses more on the mentality, how the war affected the soldiers, so much so that death is a relief. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me for part 2, where I talk about the structure and look more at the second soldier's speech. See you soon!